Well, welcome back to the Flea Factory podcast. Thanks for joining me again today, episode 6. Today I'm going to be talking to a mate of mine called Zach Fu. And Zach is living in Hong Kong at the moment. So we're going to be doing this podcast via the wonderful world of the internet. I hope you really enjoy hearing from Zach. Zach and I, have known each other for a long time. We were at school together, and you're going to hear a little bit about his journey and how he has spent some time, I guess, putting his life and his passions and his work and his responsibilities together into one big life, like the rest of us. So I really hope you enjoy this. I had an amazing time having this first interview with Zach, and I was super pleased and honored that he gave of his time to have a bit of a chat. So I hope you enjoy this. This is Zach Fu. Well, thanks for joining me all the way from Hong Kong, actually, which is pretty exciting. So it's I go first episode interviewing somebody, I go international. How good's that?
Hey, nice. First, really.
Zach, you and I went to school together, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, larger part of the high school, huh?
Yeah, that's
Were
right.
you
And
in
so
primary school? In
no,
Avi?
so year 7 I arrived. I arrived in year
Yeah,
7. Yeah. So we did high
20
school
something years
together,
ago, dude. We're old.
which is just crazy, huh? And what's been really interesting is I don't think we had chatted for years, like decades, really. And then we caught up last year. It was around October last year. You were back in
Yeah, I
Sydney,
was back in Sydney with my dad's surprise party,
right?
and
Right,
uh,
that's right.
and then I just saw one of your posts on Facebook or Instagram. I can't remember, and then I gave
Yeah,
you a message, and then we hooked up with all your kids, oh, half your kids.
half of my kids. Yeah, that's right. No, it
Yeah.
was cool. And you were down. You were trying to capture a sunrise with a drone. Is that right? At DY Beach. That was the plan.
Yeah, it turned out to be a pretty pretty bad morning. It was good that we got time to catch up and I wasn't
It was great.
distracted.
It was great, but there wasn't a lot of drone footage captured that
No,
morning.
no, 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 no.
No, sure. Anyway, I find it fascinating that after so many years, we sort of bumped into each other. And I think what's been really interesting as, I've been starting to think about this podcast and other things like that, you have kind of been in touch with me and said that some of the questions and the conversation that I'm having, and for want of a better word, the quest, which is getting a bit of people are laughing at me about the idea of a quest, but that's what I'm on. That that kind of resonated with you a little bit with, I guess, where you're at and what's been going on for you work wise and life wise, and how all that kind of fit together. And so it was a no brainer for me that we might have a chat. So let's see what happens. So
We're here.
I've decided I'm going to start every interview with a very simple question.
Yep.
So this is a question I've already asked you. Now I'll give people a bit of bit of background. I send out a survey to everybody who's thinking of coming on the podcast, and we were talking about that just before we started. And it's got some very simple questions, but they seem to have got people thinking. They've I guess, brought up some things. And what's been really interesting is lots of people have taken some significant time to answer the questions, which has really surprised me because I thought people might just kind of dot point them and move on, kind of
Hmm.
thing. But I don't know your experience of the survey, but you'd said to me that it was a sort of a valuable process.
Well, I think people tend to, well, I shouldn't say generalize. For me, I tend to think back on times like individual segments. And what the
Yep.
survey did for me was it literally went back 18 years. And you were kind of made to think through the whole 18 years of what happened and all the little bits and pieces that happened along the way. And it just brings up a lot of experience and memories that you didn't think you had.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so I must admit, and I said to you before, that like it wasn't. I wrote the survey because I thought they were good questions, but another good friend of mine said, I'm on to you." He said, He said, "I know you're a coach. You're a leadership coach. That's what you have done for many years." And he said, I'm on to you. This survey is really just a coaching intake form, and where you kind of delve into people's lives and get them to think about big questions. And
Mm.
probably on reflection, that is what it is, but I didn't intend it to be.
Hey,
So
it's good. It's worked out to be good.
Right. So if it works, it works. But the first question on that survey is a question I'm going to start my interviews with. And
Yep.
that is a very simple question, which is what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be many things.
Yep.
Um, I went to Covey in year 5, I think, or year 6. I can't remember.
Okay.
So at
So
that
that was
time,
our school in Sydney. Yeah.
yes,
Yep.
sorry, Covenant Christian School. Are we
That's
allowed to
fine.
mention
Yeah.
that?
We have done. Yeah. Don't see why not.
um, so when I had very, no, I have very traditional, what I thought to be very traditional parents, Chinese
Okay.
parents.
Yep.
And from the beginning, I think I wanted to be a mechanical engineer to design cars.
Okay.
Um, and then I realized my math wasn't good enough, so that kind of changed a little bit. And then it went into human resources, which it was a very safe bet from my parents' point of view, I guess,
Okay.
because every company needs someone to hire people and talk to people and come somewhat understand what the workers are doing, right?
Sure.
Um, but the interesting thing was when I was in year 10, remember that tennis school outside our school?
Yeah. Right outside the front gate.
So Peter Gibson, I started playing tennis there randomly at year 10 and I fell in love with it. And I don't know whether you
So you
know,
didn't have a
but
history in tennis. That was.
no, I started when I was
Oh,
16, 15.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, and
Okay.
then it went from there to working part-time for him, like 2 hours a week on a Saturday morning with kids that are between 7 and 10 or 7 and 11.
Hmm.
It was a ball. I loved the experience and I fell in love with the game. And from then on, I wanted to be a tennis player. But my coach did say to me, "Hey, look, you're starting a little bit late. Your mental game will be need a lot of work." I didn't care. I actually fought with my parents a little bit after high school, and I went behind my parents' back and worked out a deal with the tennis coach so that I can work for him. And with the time that I work, I exchange for lessons.
Okay.
So after high school, that's what I did, and that's what I wanted to be. Um, I think I did about 3 or 4 years of that. Uh,
So no uni, no other study. You went straight in. That was what you were doing as a job.
yeah, I was working as a
Yeah.
job
Cool.
and
Yep.
fulfilling what I wanted to be, what I
Great.
thought I wanted to be,
Okay.
or at least I thought if I didn't do it, I would regret it.
Okay.
I think.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It was hard work, dude. It was,
Mm.
oh man, I didn't realize it at first. Looking back at it now, I started at 5:30 every morning, grooming the
Hmm.
courts, getting it ready for competitions. And then once the competition gets going, I would sit at the front desk, manage the front desk, manage the ladies who are coming in the mornings. We have some breakfast set up as well, so we did that. And then after that, it was more like a study time for me to do my studies and my kind of trying to do all the not the exams, what do you call them? Not homework, papers.
Oh yeah. Okay. Like certificate kind of level things.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Um, and then lunchtime, once they're gone, I will start training. Afternoons, I would have to do a bus pickup around the schools around Chatswood, Linfield, and all those places. And then I would teach for 2 to 3 hours, and then I train myself. I would train with the group for myself for another 3 hours at night. And then once that's done, I would go on to restringing rackets until sometime 12, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Hmm. Gee.
And then go home, sleep, and then we start the day again. And it was 7 days a week. And I did that
Wow.
for 3 years. It got to a point where my parents said to me, "Hey, studying would be a lot easier, right?"
Sure.
um, but it's kind of an experience that I treasure, and to a point, like my boss, Peter Gibson, he became a somewhat a mentor without being knowing. that
Mm,
he was being a mentor for me.
yeah.
So it got to a stage where, I mean, this is, I think, is one of the most important part to me when I think back, is that he trained me to take on all the new clients that came into the tennis club. So what we
Okay.
would do is we would give like a half an hour introduction lessons. And for me, I have to write a report about that guy to my boss to tell him, what type of player he wants to be, what type of why is he coming here. And what he taught me was by speaking to these people in that half an hour, he my boss taught me to understand how people learn.
Okay.
Um, whether it's a visual learner, whether it's a verbal learner, whether it's whether I have to paint a picture to him or do I have to lay it out in chapters, is
Okay.
what I'm trying to say. So that was a training, that was a skill that I never thought that I would be training myself without actually knowing that I was being trained for. You know what I mean?
Right. So that was a byproduct of you being in that environment, which you weren't going there to get, but that's what you ended up getting.
No, 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 no,
Yeah.
no, not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
I'll go and become a
17.
tennis coach and I'll learn how to work with people and do sales and learn how people learn. That wasn't your motivation behind doing the
No,
job.
it's not.
No.
And then he made me realize that, like it's not really sales. Sales is not sales. If you're not passionate about something, if you don't love something, you can't really sell it,
Right. Yeah.
right? And
Lots of
if you
people
love
try, I
something,
imagine.
I mean, if you love something, you're not actually selling. You're just
That's right.
sharing,
Yeah. You're telling a
right?
story. Yeah.
Yeah. So he just said, I mean, I still remember he saying to me, like, if these people come here, they don't want to be, the number one tennis player in the world. And most of the time, they just wanted to share experience. And I
Right.
mean, that's at the point, it's what they're doing. They
Mm.
want to learn something and they're sharing it with you. And you're the guy
Yeah.
who is determining them which coach that he should go to because we have different coaches with different teaching styles. And yeah, that was a good 5 years of my time.
Wow.
Um, what else
Ah,
can I
see,
say? It was
isn't that
awesome.
funny? I knew you were playing tennis and I knew you were working there. I never knew any of that, and like obviously maybe you never knew any of that until with hindsight. Um, but yeah, how interesting that what starts as just a little interest and then maybe a part time job. You and in reflection can say it shaped you and made helped you learn amazing things. And I think what else is really interesting that you've said, and I'm seeing as I'm talking about people is always a person. Someone always talks about a person at some point who
Mm,
says they were really influential or they were really encouraging or they so Peter Gibson for you is like this this person that kind of embodies something special and interesting and a valuable part of your life. And I think it's the people, right? It's not just the jobs, it's the people inside the experiences that make all the difference.
yeah. I think even to this day, some of my friends are working in companies because they enjoy the people they're working with,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've got to
I,
love what you do
yeah, of course.
and the people you do it with. Ultimately, that's what
Yeah.
gives you longevity. I would imagine.
I mean, I'm lucky to be working for myself, and
Yeah,
most of the time it is by myself with the line of work that I do. But I can't imagine going to work every single day for 10, 15, 20 years with someone you hate sitting next to you that you never talk to. It sounds
sure.
like it sounds
Well,
like a
I agree
horrible
with you,
life.
but I agree with you, but I think there are probably people out there who do
Oh, I got friends around me who does it.
it. Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll
And
get to
yeah.
that. Yeah. So where does that get us up to? That gets us up to like 2000,
Um,
somewhere around there. Does that get us to there?
yeah, so after that, my parents, they ran, my dad runs a hospitality supplies business.
Right.
And at that time, my father, So the reason why we were in Australia is because my dad got transferred, and he was so
Okay.
kind to make a deal with the company to say, "Hey, look, if you want me in Australia to start up a business, I want my family with me." So that was
Okay.
the package. So that's how we relocated to Australia back in
Right.
1989. Sorry, 1989.
89. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I still remember the first place we lived at was a motel at Terry Hills.
It's like Terry Hill's Tavern.
Uh, Not quite that far down. It was in the middle
Right.
between what's that road? The fruit market and some. I can't
I yeah.
remember.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
could drive you there. I can't
Yeah,
remember all the
yeah.
road names. So that's how we came to Australia, and we knew no
Okay.
one. We had no
Sure.
friends, or we had one business. My dad had a business partner, that we hung out with quite a lot when we first got there. Kind of got us on our feet and get our orientation.
Yep.
I don't know what, I don't know where this was leading us into. I've
No, that's fine.
lost my train
So
of
that got
thought.
us to you got us to 2001. Your dad was in a hospitality supplies business, and that's how you ended up in Australia. So that was the
Yeah. Okay.
yep.
So from tennis, was the there was a night because my dad used to travel back and forth between Hong Kong and Australia,
Okay.
and by towards the uh, 98, so it must be 2000. I got involved with the family business, and it was set
Okay.
up in Australia. So I was just helping him run what he set up. I
Hmm.
had no idea what I was doing. I just did what makes sense. And I took everything that I learned from tennis coaching to this job. And it was just
Okay.
about talking to people, really,
Yep.
understanding their needs, understanding how their delivering time schedule works. Um, and I just managed what was going on, and maybe I added some extra bits and pieces on sales and things like that. But yeah, I just kept it going. Kind of start learning the family business, and eventually by 2000, wait, that's not right.
The years all start to mush into one.
So I think I ran that business for about 9 months, and then I ended up going back to Hong Kong because of my girlfriend at the time.
Okay.
And she was studying in Sydney. She finished her master's, and the first job she gets transferred to Shanghai.
Wow. So you at that point went to Hong Kong, or you went to China at that point?
At that point, I went back to Hong Kong to help out with the family business.
Ah, right.
And I
Okay.
thought,
And
hey,
she went to Shanghai.
yeah, she was in Shanghai.
Okay.
I thought, well, because Hong Kong and Shanghai is only about 2.5 hour flights away.
Yeah.
So I thought must be a little bit closer than Australia.
Sure.
Um,
Step in the right direction.
well, yeah, to be honest, I saw her more when I was in Australia
Yeah.
than I was in Hong Kong.
Sure. Sure. So
um,
did your parents move back as well to Hong Kong at that point? So the whole family went back?
so when I started working at the tennis club, my mother took my sister back to Hong Kong because at that time my
Right.
dad was spending more time
In
in
Hong
Hong
Kong
Kong
than
than
this.
Australia.
Right. Okay.
And because I finished high school, I have a job. Um, they thought, well, it's my sister was also at the right age to go back to Hong Kong to study before the senior schools.
Okay, right.
So she gets to make friends and then get a bunch of,
Yeah.
people who can support her.
Okay.
Um,
So you were left to be self-sufficient at that point?
yeah, and I
Yeah.
was plenty self-sufficient.
Right. Yeah, sure.
After the tennis lessons, because I was working so hard,
Yeah.
the hours are so long. Um, yeah, I did not have trouble.
Yeah.
I was making too much for a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid. That's for sure.
Did you just buy cars at that point, knowing you? Was that what happened?
No, I, what did I do? I have no idea how I spent all my money. Um, but
But you
I'm
did.
sure, I'm sure, I'm sure if I didn't spend that money, I also wouldn't have gotten the experience I got.
Right.
So, and the people I meet, what happened was my boss had made a career in Japan playing tennis. So when he came back, he
Okay.
actually had a lot of contacts from the Japanese people, and we had
Okay.
students flying from Japan to Australia to
Wow.
just purely play tennis every single day for 5, 6 hours a day.
Wow.
Um, so it was good. Like, I mean, I made some really good friends. I still have some really close friends from Japan
Yep.
and in Japan right now.
Yep.
Um, one of which actually married a Hong Kong girl because we all went out together. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah. So you find yourself back in Hong Kong. You're working in a hospitality industry.
yeah.
Um, now, so I know from previous conversations, some of the things you've kind of sent me through that wasn't particularly um, you didn't love that. That wasn't amazing. You just you got through it and you applied what you'd learnt in other things to it. But ultimately, it wasn't the thing that kind of you woke up in the morning going, "This is what I want to do with my life." But it was what it was. Yeah, it, it,
It
it
was what
was
it
it was
was.
work.
I was learning the business, learning something new,
Yep.
and also learning how to communicate with my parents.
Okay. Yeah.
Well,
Right.
actually,
Well,
my
that's
parent and my auntie.
okay because they were all involved in the business.
Yes, it's my auntie's business, and
Ah, I
she
see.
built that from the ground up. And I mean, she was amazing. She really was,
Sure.
but she was too amazing as well at the same time.
What does too amazing mean?
You know, she likes to keep track with everything that's going on, and
Sure.
at the max time, we had close to 50, maybe 60 staff.
Okay.
Um, and of course, different departments would deal with different locations in the world. And I was in charge of, I guess, all the overseas clients because my English is a lot better than all the other guys.
Okay.
But she made it a point to go through every single email that goes out of the company every single
Right.
night.
Okay.
So she knew exactly what was going on with any person in the office. She
Got it.
knew exactly the deals that we were doing. She knew exactly the prices we were giving that's too low or too high.
Okay.
It was just a crazy experience.
Sure.
But also because of um, how she handled the company, she never really had time for herself.
Right.
And I guess she also slowly made that part of her life, well, a part of her life.
Right. So I
Um,
imagine you learn things that you. So the other thing I'm picking up as I'm talking to people is what we do. We do one of two things. We either learn what we want to do with our lives by watching people around us,
Mhm.
or we work out what we don't want to do with our lives by watching people around us. If that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah,
We
that's
go,
what.
yeah, I don't want to do that, and I don't want to. Um, uh, yeah, I don't want that to be the way that I put my life together because I've seen what it does to other people. Or I definitely want to pursue that because I've seen the benefits of the way that's worked. So you again start to grow your understanding of how to put life and work together, even in a job that's not your ideal perfect space. The time you spend in that starts to shape you and shape your decisions moving forward.
Yeah. What can I say? People like to people are much clearer on what they don't like than what they like.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's easier for people to say, "Hey, I don't like this. I don't want this," or
Right.
"I prefer." It's not like, "Hey, I really like this." I don't
Mm.
know. I'm
That's a
like,
really interesting thing. I think you're right in the sense that um, I think we're more in touch with things that we go, nah, I don't want to do this. But I'm not
it's
sure
people know
necessarily
immediately what they don't want to do.
sure, but then I'm not sure people often are brave enough to do anything about it.
Yeah,
Does that make
that's
sense? Like
that makes a lot of sense. That
so
makes
I
a
think
lot
I
of
think you're
sense.
right. I think you know that this is not how you want things to be put together. But to then change your life significantly so that's no longer how your life is being put together is you have to show some kind of courage because it's not easy. Okay, it's probably easy to identify what you don't want. It's not easy to then not live like that anymore. It's not
Yeah,
easy, and so I'm not flippant
it's
about
not.
it. I'm not like, you should just change your life. No, 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 no. That's tough. That's a big deal. But yeah, the courage to then say, okay, I'm now to put into action the thing I don't want. I think is a big step. And I think one of the reasons is the other thing you just said, which I think is also true, is I think people then say, but I don't actually know what I do want.
Hmm.
So if I'm going to make a brave, courageous decision not to do this anymore, the next question becomes really relevant, which is, so what do you want to do?
Mm,
And then I think if you have an absence of the answer to the second question, you don't want to get brave moving on from the first, if that makes sense, because
mm,
ultimately you're jumping into nothingness. And I think we are far more conditioned to put up with things we don't like for long periods of time because we don't know the alternative. We haven't got all the answers.
mm.
So, well, I know I hate it, but hey, at least I know it. At least I'm, better the devil you know kind of stuff, you know?
Mm.
Um, but that I think those two things are true. People are acutely aware of what they don't want, but I'm not quite sure they do know what they do want. And I think sometimes that paralyzes us in between those two questions.
Yeah, and a lot of times, when you're going through it, you don't actually realize it until it's a little bit too late sometimes.
Right. Well,
And
that's
I guess,
the old adage of any business owner, isn't it? That they spend so much time working in their business that they don't spend any time working on their business. Um, I think that's the reality for most of us, that we spend so much time trying to work out our life live that we don't take a moment to have a bit of perspective and see if we're working on the right thing. I have a my coach. I've had a coach for years, and he said there's no point climbing a ladder if the ladder's leaning on the wrong wall, right? And so
that's so true.
I think I think a lot of the time we're so focused on getting up a ladder that the problem is when we get to the top, we go, nuts.
Yeah, but then
It's on the wrong one.
without that ladder, you wouldn't know that you were on the wrong one.
That's true. And I guess there's two ways. One, I think you've got to climb up multiple ladders, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with climbing a ladder going, this isn't for me. We've always started to talk about that. You've done things that aren't necessarily the one thing. And I think this is the reality of life and work is we're going to do lots of different things and we're going to learn something in every single season, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing wrong with climbing those different ladders and then pulling down it. I'm not talking about corporate ladders and success. I'm just talking about
Of course.
committing yourself to things. Like there's
Like
nothing wrong
a
with that either. But
general
also
path.
the other side of that is if you just took a second and took a deep breath and take a couple of steps backwards and look up, you might actually see what it is you're heading towards. And so I think if you could do both of those things simultaneously, that's a healthy process,
Mm.
you know.
It
So
is very.
I'm not idealistic enough to say that there's one thing for every person and you need to find that one wall and climb that one thing. I'm not that guy. Maybe other people, that's their life and their experience, and that's totally fine. That's not been
One
mine.
one
Um,
theory one theory that I have, in regards to finding the perfect partner. I say to my
yep,
cousins, I say to my friends all the time, and people generally, or friends around me generally, tend to gravitate towards one type of person in finding a partner. And I keep asking him, like, if you keep going back to the same type of person, how do you know that person is the perfect fit for you? Especially when you keep breaking up with that type of person,
yep,
right? So what's the point? What's the point of going back to the same old road if you know that road is going to lead you to a dead end?
right,
And I guess I guess I also live by that idea when it comes to my career, professional life.
yep,
That if one place don't work, then that means that there must be another road,
yeah, yeah,
right? And we don't know what that road is until you try it. You
yeah,
can research it, but until you, it's like studying,
yeah,
right? You can study as much and you can have the huge knowledge base about something. Let's say golf, for example. You can read up on it, you can watch videos on it, but until you grab that club and you have that ball in front of you, you don't know what
Yeah, that's
you're
right.
gonna do. And
Yeah.
it's about
Yeah.
persistence and training and get to a point where you're comfortable with that thing that you're doing. And sooner or later you'll find out whether you like it or not.
Yeah. And I think we're living in a world that has changed, and this is part of the podcast is called The Flea Factory, based on the book The Elephant and the Flea. And if you read some of Charles
Uh-huh.
Handy's work, he we're living in a changing world where the idea that you would leave school and do one thing for the rest of your life is not the world we currently live in. Not the majority of us, right?
Ah, no,
We
no,
are
no, no
going to
way.
do a variety of things throughout our life, and I think we are going to learn different things by doing those different things, and that's a good thing. I think about even my dad. My dad went straight out of school and trained as a fitter and turner, which literally I think
Mm,
everybody did. Like, do
okay.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like whenever I asked a bunch of people, they're like, "Oh yes, no, mate, I trained as a fitter and turner." He never fitted and turned his whole life. I don't think after he finished his apprenticeship, but it was kind of the thing you did. But when I look back, he was a policeman, and he ran a driving school, and he ran a bus company, and then he ended his career making industrial magnets for welders.
Oh,
Like it
really?
just a like I just look at his career path, and he's not my generation, and even he didn't do one thing his whole career. But the world is changing, at an ever increasing rate, and this idea that for the majority, now there are some people who will come out of school, study, become a doctor, and be a doctor till they die. That's fine, and that
Hmm.
there will still be those kind of careers. But the vast majority of us will do a variety of things throughout our lives, and we'll bring with us our own personal skills and insights. And
Especially
we'll,
now.
yeah,
Especially
absolutely.
now. I know friends who runs a Shopify store and then
Yep.
he has a full-time job and then he
Yep.
also makes money from streaming gaming at nighttime.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's just different. There's what we were taught doesn't work in this world anymore.
Yeah, and I think that you're going to get me on a whole nother tangent there, which I want to explore at some point. But I think well, Charles Handy will talk about in his book that the way we educate young people is currently, and historically has been to prepare them to work in a factory. So he
Mm,
said, we blow a whistle, they come in, we blow another whistle, they have a tea
they
break,
go
we blow
out.
another whistle,
Yeah.
they go back to work. And he said, and that the way that we've educated young people is to prepare them for a life of work where that's how they will work.
Mm,
The reality is that the world of work we're pushing young people into right now is a vastly different world. It's a world where
hugely.
you have to be creative and resilient, and freelancing and like these things, which are not necessarily the ways that they're preparing themselves, are
Mm.
being prepared for. And so, I guess that segues us to something I'm fascinated. I'd love to talk to you about, and I'd love for you to share. Last time we were together, you talked very briefly about two things. Now, you, I know you ended up going into design and
Mm-hmm.
into photography, which
Mm-hmm.
is currently where you are now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
So I found out that I was really bad at designing.
Right. Okay. That's good. And now there's another job that I'd love you to talk about that I know in there. So I'd love to kind of track this through. But I remember you talking to me about running like a restaurant, like a little private kitchen
Ah, okay.
rest.
So
That's
bring back to the
because that was
timeline.
fascinating. Yeah, bring back the timeline because that's fascinating to me. That little arc of your story and how you've just tried stuff. Like you've seen stuff in front of you and you've just gone, oh, we'll give this a go and see what happens. That for me, yeah. So let's go back in your timeline and piece that
Okay,
together if you can.
so after working in Hong Kong with my parents'
Yeah,
company, it it I found it really tough.
yeah,
We were more like he was my boss and I was his worker.
right.
And we kind of lost the father and son connection, which I
Okay,
really did not like. So I said to dad, "Hey, look, this is not working." And I think he was quite upset about it because he had high
yeah,
hopes that I would come in and
okay,
and to look after the family business from there. And he could retire, and he could just sit back and give me advice from the couch. And that was at that time. At the time, that was what I really wanted.
Okay.
I take on the family business. I thought it was very important
Yep.
until I realized it's just not something that I want to do for the rest of my life.
Right.
I spoke to my mum about it. My mum was encouraging me to speak out. She knew the repercussion, I think.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, she
So
supported me.
she joined you in
And
your courageous moment.
not so courageous thinking about
No,
it.
I don't know.
So after that, my wife had also. It was about 3 months before our wedding, I think, maybe a little bit longer. We bought a dog, and she left her work. And that was really to because we wanted to do everything at the wedding ourselves. We
Okay.
wanted to spend time and plan our wedding so we can enjoy it. I mean, a lot of people would go through the wedding, well, I think, anyways, and they end up enjoying that day. And the process leading up to it, they never enjoy. It's always a rush,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we took time off, and after the wedding, we decided to go to Shanghai because it was a up and coming place. It was
Hmm.
buzzing. All the money and all the brands are trying to fight their way into China.
Yep.
And because she also has been working at that time, must have been about 3 to 4 years. So she has built up a lot of networking contacts there. And we just thought it makes sense to go to Shanghai. But of course, for me to go to Shanghai, I knew no one. Uh, we how did the restaurant start? So we 2 weeks before going up to Shanghai, I met a friend, and he was living in these four-story lane houses where it's quite a traditional house where it's like thin. It's like the lane houses in,
Yep.
in Sydney.
Yes. Okay. Yep.
So it's
Like a
thin and
townhouse
long.
kind of.
Town, yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
But what traditionally happens is there's 4 stories and there's bedrooms in each one, and
Okay.
different families would stay together in this one building, and it has a common kitchen and has a common lounge room.
Okay.
Um,
So like studio apartments that didn't have their own cooking facilities. That kind of idea.
uh, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
it's a house that a lot
A
of
lot of
men,
people just
a
live in.
lot
Okay.
of
Right.
families shared it.
Got it. Got it.
So we were lucky that the kitchen was really long. It was well set up. The building used to be lived in by my friend, and it was too big for him. He got a good deal for it. He said, "Hey, look, if you want to take it on with you and your wife, you should make an offer to the landlord." And at that time, we couldn't actually afford the price that he was paying, so we sent in what we thought we could afford, and we got it. And we were two people and a dog living in a 4 or 5 bedroom apartment house with a really nicely set up kitchen with marble tops, and we could do breads, we could do pastas. And I was struggling to think of what I could do because it would take me a good 6 to 9 months to meet people, to sell myself, which I'm really bad at.
Yep.
And then suddenly we came up with the idea that we would just cook simple home cooked meals. Um, and we would charge people for it. And it would be at 10 people max. And we would have set courses. It We did the math, it worked out, and we started doing it.
Okay. So you have
Uh,
no background in cooking, or this is not like you've not trained, and this is just you've just worked out this is an opportunity.
well, I've always liked to cook. And
Yeah.
because when I was doing tennis, I had to save a lot of money. I couldn't eat out every night. So I
Right.
planned my meals, and then eventually my sister returned for the senior part of high school in Australia and
Right.
leading into university. So she was also my parents were still in Hong Kong, and she came back, and she was living with me, and I was looking after her. So we cook a lot. It just
Okay.
wasn't on a professional
Sure.
level.
Sure.
I
You
didn't
enjoyed it.
know whether, yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
hugely enjoys it. And the meals that we do were meals that takes a long time to cook. It wasn't just something that you fry up, and
Yep.
it's good sauces and good soups, and we did breads that breads and pastas, and basically everything from entrees to dessert we did in house, and we did that for roughly 9 months.
Right.
And that was the only thing that I could think of that I could actually, I hate to use this word, but that's what it is. Trap people in my house for for 3 hours.
Right. Got it.
And like after I cook, I would come out and I'll speak to the clients and the customers, and I'll get to know them, and I'll get them to give them time to know me as well, while over hopefully what they think was good food. And yeah, just to break the ice and get the network going. I didn't know what else to do.
Yep. Right. I find that fascinating. I just think that story is amazing.
I looking back now, we did okay. I mean, I think at max we were doing like what we try to do is we try to do 5 nights a week, and we achieve four.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be consecutive, which was great for us because usually it means that we would plan it so that we have one night on, one night off, one night on, one night
Okay.
off.
Okay.
And the greatest experience was we ended up getting more Chinese people to come to our restaurant than expats at the time,
Okay.
because they enjoyed the experience of learning how to use fork and knives without being in a commercial restaurant that they felt
Right.
people were looking at them. So it put them at
Wow.
ease, and we knew how
Okay.
to speak Chinese as well. So, we were having conversations. And some of them were very honest to say, "Hey, look, I love it. Can I have, a couple of knives and forks? Because I'm gonna drop some on the floor at some stage." Um, yeah, it was good. It was really good. It was hard work, you know,
Sure.
but it was good.
Well, it doesn't sound like anything up until this point you've done wasn't hard work. It was just different.
It was. I wouldn't even say it's different, to be honest.
Okay.
And at that time, I didn't realize how much hours and how much work that I was actually doing towards what I was doing.
Sure.
I guess most of the time I'd done something, it had a certain goal, I had a certain end that I was trying to achieve.
Okay.
Um, so you kind of lose sight of the day-to-day things, for me,
Yep.
anyways.
Okay. Is that because if you're doing something you enjoy, um, you don't count the cost of the time and effort? Is that, are they connected?
Oh,
Is that a
for sure,
yeah?
because you don't count it because you're enjoying every minute of it. It's like
Sure.
setting up for a photo, right? Like the 2 hours that you're waiting for that one shot. You're also sitting there enjoying nature. You're also sitting there enjoying the
Right.
people around you. You're also enjoying watching the sun come up. It's
Right.
amazing.
Whereby there are different jobs where you would count every minute. There's those jobs where
Oh
you,
yeah,
those
oh
jobs where
yeah.
you go, oh, what time is it? And you look at your watch and it's like 11 o'clock in the morning, and you
I,
think,
I
surely it's 3:30.
uh during high school, during the term breaks, I used to
Yep.
work a job. So I used to go to church, and this guy we know from church runs a video duplication house.
Okay.
And what he does is he does all the educational videos, like the 5 minute, 10 minute long videos that we used to
Right.
see at school.
Yep.
And he has a master. We had like hundreds and hundreds of VCRs, and we used
Like
to,
VHS cassette VCRs. Yeah. Right.
yes. And somehow I fell into this job that we worked from like it was like 9 at night until like 7 in the morning.
Oh, right.
And a bunch of us, and I got to be really close friends with those guys, and a bunch of us would sit in the back of this church, and we would put the master in, press, put the master in, rewind it, and then
Yep.
put all the blanks in all the different machines, and just wait, load, and then we would press play on one, and then record on the other. and it would just clack, 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 clack. Every single machine would start like turning on and record. Like, yeah, it was good. And while it's recording, we had to do the packaging. We fold the boxes up
Right.
to, yeah. Anyways, so I did that for.
And here we are talking from Adelaide to Hong Kong over the internet. That's a different time, isn't it?
So um yeah, so we yeah, that was also that yeah, that was a time to that was a great time. It was a great
Wow.
time.
So fascinating. So let's talk about your I guess your latest transition into photography and how like 'cause that was the other thing I kind of when we caught up last year I kind of said did you have a background in photography and other things and he said no I bought a camera kind of kind of thing. How did that start to happen? And so that this is your business now. This is how you're sort of earning a living. How
Yeah.
how did that transition into photography take place for you?
I've always enjoyed capturing moments with
Right.
whether it was a camera or whether it's on the phone or whether it's, just mental capture. And photography, I realized you could make a living from it when I came out to do freelance design work after working for the family business.
Okay.
And I think it was the third or fourth client that I had, and she was doing a frozen yogurt store.
Okay.
And they, in on top of designing the logo and the menu, they also needed someone to take some photos of the different ice creams that they had selling. So that was how I started incorporating something that I used to do a lot
Yep.
into a professional career. When I first moved to Shanghai, we started the restaurant. We met a lot of people, and I met some filmmakers, and one of the filmmaker got me to be a cameraman for one day to record video for a yoga instructor or aerobics instructor, one of the two.
Okay.
And just so happens he rented this studio. It's called White Space, and during the shooting process, it was like 2 or 3 days. I started talking to the owner of the studio. Um, for some reason, we went deep really quick. Like, where did you come from? How did you get here? Because he's not a Shanghainese, he's from Hunan.
Hmm.
Um, and he also finished his studies and then moved to Shanghai. And at that time, he was interning at a advertising agency for 300 RMB a month. So that would be $50 a month.
Okay.
So he came from that type of background, and I really admired him. And he eventually worked his way into his home studio to shoot jewelry, and then he started his studio. And during that time, we got quite close. Those 2 3 days, amazingly, and I started asking him out to dinner, and we started talking, and we became really good friends. And we decided to let's start something together. And we started the photography studio, and that was 7 years ago.
Wow.
Um, at that time, we didn't have that many clients.
Yeah.
I had friends who were working in places like Unilever. So, have you heard of Lux, the shampoo?
Yes.
And yeah,
Yep.
so that was our first big client, and it was they partnered with the beauty pageant in Shanghai, and we had 13 great, tall looking girls. Like, and we were shooting the whole thing in our studio, and we were so proud. We were so
That you made
happy,
it.
and yeah, we didn't think about how to keep it up um,
Right.
at that time, but we just did it, and everything turned out great. The client was happy, and things went on from that was our first project together, and we felt like we could work with each other, and that's how we just kept going.
Okay. And so that's the business that continues today for you.
Now that I'm So recently we relocated back to Hong Kong, my wife and
Yeah.
I.
Right.
So right now we're still trying to work out how to handle that, whether I fly back, whether it makes sense for me to fly back for a project, whether he can handle it.
Okay. Okay.
So we're still talking about how to handle the being in separate places. Maybe I can open a separate branch here, but
Okay.
seems not likely.
Okay. So that's what you're working through at the moment.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
it also gives me time for my own creative space.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, that's the other thing I wanted to chat to you about. One of the things that I love watching on your social media is your street photography, because
Yeah,
that for me, that's a super powerful. Yeah, it's super powerful, and I think as I'm hearing you tell, parts of your story, there's a common theme as I listen to you, and I think
yeah,
the reason I
okay.
love your street photography is I think that theme kind of manifests itself, and that theme is people, um,
Mm.
and and genuine connection. So telling a story, sort of an authentic story, and getting to actually know people, like rather than just yeah. And I don't know how to describe it. I hope I'm doing it justice, but when I look at your street photography, I can see your desire to tell a story and for
Hmm.
you to kind of tell an authentic, kind of real side of things. And I think what's fascinating for me, I watch you, obviously, the majority of your street photography at the moment is in Hong Kong.
Hmm.
And there's all sorts of stories and all sorts of real things happening. You're in an amazing place at the moment with so much going on.
Yeah.
And you're telling an authentic story that I think is really valuable. So
You know how all that started?
no, tell me,
It's
please.
because I felt out of love with what I was building.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
it like you
Taking
think that
photos of yogurt.
and shampoos and
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 shampoos.
beer bottles and
Sure.
yeah, it's
But
when we
because but
first started
that's not
the
because that's not a good business. It's just but you're motivated by people and story, right? And so taking a picture of an object, you can do that
it's
well professionally, but your passion is for people and story, right?
we I didn't know that at the time. I didn't.
Sure.
I actually, in reverse, I actually didn't get what street photography was all about when I
Okay.
first got introduced to it.
Okay.
Like, I just thought it was like random shots from random people about random people.
Right. Right. It's just I got it. Which I guess it can be. Some people do that is their street photography.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course, of
Yeah.
course. And what happened was when we when we first dug into opening a studio, it was a good couple of years before I actually got out of that place. As in, I got my head out of that place because we were so
Right.
concentrating on meeting rent,
Of
meeting
course.
payment for staff, meeting payment for external suppliers that we had to get, and making sure the projects are coming in so that we could pay ourselves at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, for that couple of years, we thought, everything's going to be great because clients are going to listen to us because we're professionals, and all the advice that we give, they will just slap it all up. But that wasn't the case. In China at the time, a lot of brands coming in, and a lot of brands had no idea what they were doing. So, I mean, China is a very complicated market. It's very,
Okay.
very complicated. Like at that time, people they had no history. So everything
Okay.
that you're working on is a new experience for them. And a lot of brands were a little bit stumped. So what they end up doing was, hey, that brand, that my competitor is doing that. Why don't we do something similar? Because I know that works for him
Sure.
or them. So it got to a place where every client that we had, they would first say to us, hey, we want something different. But at the end of the day, you work through the process. We wasted like 3 months. And then it would go back to, hey, I'll do what she's doing. I'll have
Got
what
it.
she's having.
Yeah, sure.
And it after a good couple of years of that, you kind of lose faith, you kind of lose passion, you become a replicator, you don't push yourself anymore.
Right.
And that's where I got into a rut with, you know, building something that I so wanted, but because of the
Mm,
process, it kind of killed the passion as well.
right.
And um and uh and uh and And one day I just thought, hey, look, I need time to myself. And I grabbed one camera and I walked the street. I had my headphones in. I started walking and I started taking snaps of people, of what's happening around me, instead of looking at what's happening to me. And
Right.
that's how everything started.
Gee, that's a perspective change and a half.
It took a little while for me to get there.
Yeah, but even just the concept that you would think to look at what is happening around you, not just to you. That's a massive that's
but that's that's
that's a
what that goes back to.
recalibration of life, right?
But it also goes back to what my mentor has told me. It's not
Yeah,
about you, it's about them. Why are they here? What do they want? You got to learn that. And I guess
yeah,
that kind of ingrained to me.
yeah.
Um, Not ingrained into me. Yeah.
I get what you're
Uh,
saying. Yeah.
yeah, it was. Yeah, yeah, and that journey has now been 3 years. I
Mm,
started taking video, taking photos of people on the street, and I did not share it. I did not. I just kept it for myself for the first
right.
year and a half.
Okay. Was there a reason for that? Why you didn't share it?
I didn't like to be judged.
Sure. Yeah.
I was too scared. I was, and now I encourage anyone who wants to create something to share because people. There are so many different people out there. Your work
Mm,
is guaranteed to be liked by someone, and
yeah.
and
Yeah,
if
that's
people
a
don't like it, who the hell cares?
well, inherently there will be people who don't like things you do,
Yeah,
and it's just the
exactly.
nature of it. Because the reality is, there's things I don't like.
Yeah,
This doesn't mean those things I don't like shouldn't exist. It
yeah,
just means they're not
and
my thing.
it doesn't mean it's bad. Yeah, of
Yeah,
course. Like you take the comments and you think about it and you go through it to see whether it's
sure,
true to yourself, and
sure,
it is the place where you can improve yourself. But to be honest, it's just someone random that you'll never see again making a comment.
right,
So why
right.
should
And
that
that's
comment
the
affect
two.
the rest of your life?
Yeah, well, that's a two-edged sword of the the reach we have through social media these days is that we have the ability to um, distribute things like we've never had before, but it also means that lots of people who have no idea who you are can throw comments back at you
Oh, I
without
mean
knowing anything about you.
to be honest, I don't have a huge following, and I'm not
Yeah,
doing it for the following. I'm just doing
that's
it
right.
to please myself,
Right.
and it's gotten me through the last 3, 4 years
Yeah.
without any trouble.
But that's attractive, and I think I'll be really honest with you. This podcast finally, I spent a long time since I left my last big job. I decided I wanted to run a coaching and training business because they were the things
Hmm.
that I was good at. That was what I've done people development for 20 years. That's what I love, and I love helping people take their next step.
Did you
And I
enjoy what you
jumped
did
out of
before?
sorry,
Did you enjoy what you did before?
I was good at what I did before.
Okay,
That's different, isn't it? Um,
I guess it is.
did I enjoy it? Yes, at times.
Hmm.
Um, but what I've just as you mentioned earlier, what I've done recently in the last couple of years, I've realized what I don't want to do again.
Hmm.
The bravery now is to do that, as we talked about earlier. So the problem was, I've recently worked out I was starting because it's so strong. The pull back to what you know is so strong, the
Mm.
default that
Hmm.
and especially if you are good at the default, even though you don't want to do it, if you're good at it, they're the opportunities that people seem to bring you. And sometimes you
Mm.
end up saying yes to things and end up doing things. And then all of a
Mm.
sudden you go, hang on, I'm back doing what I'm good at, and everyone else seems to clap and celebrate because they all go, oh,
Mm.
it's so great you're here, you're doing such an amazing job. And all of that's true. But what they don't understand is that there's a cost to that, and the cost is you. Like
Mm.
I'm bearing the cost of this being good because this doesn't fill me up. This isn't something where I flourish. It's just that I
Mm.
can do those things. So
Mm.
I
Mm.
guess
Mm.
my takeaway statement at the moment is just because I can doesn't mean I should.
Mhm.
And so really honest, I have been putting off doing something like this podcast because I for years have said my career and my life is about helping other people pursue their the life that they want, and I've But that's just a cop out, right? Because that means I don't go after the life I want because I kind of justify it as I'm helping other people. And that, as noble as that sounds, what it ultimately means is I'm just I'm too chicken to actually be courageous enough to push into the thing that I want to do. And so what I want to do is I want to help people tell stories. That's what I want to do. And so there's a commonality there between your story and mine that I find fascinating, that
Mm,
I genuinely am passionate about people and their stories and their journey
mm,
and how they live life. I'm passionate about that.
mm,
But I best serve people. And I did this, for 10 years, I worked for an organization where I just, I raised my own funds, and I did, I went after things, and I lived very kind of counterculturally to a lot of people around me. And what happened, as I reflect on that, what happened was I wasn't doing, like you said, you're not doing that for the followers and the attention and for people to, it's not about, it's about you doing what you're passionate about and what you think you need to do next. I was just getting on with running my race. And what happened was everyone around, lots of people around me would say, I am encouraged or I am challenged by the way that you go about what you do. And I would say, but that's not why I do it. I don't do it to challenge you or to encourage you. I do it because this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
mm.
And I've
Okay.
realized recently, again, my coach said to me the other week, I said, what are you going to do next? And I said, well, I think I need to make my coaching and training business work. And he said, okay. And we started talking about strategies. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of our conversation, I said to him, yeah, can I read you something? And I'd been working on kind of some future ideas and really just working on trying to write down what I really wanted and what some was really going on in me. And I'd prepared sort of 5 or 6 pages of this stuff. And I just said, there's a section here I want to read for you. And he said, please. And I read it to him. And he said, that's exactly opposite to what you just told me you want to do next. Like, it's
Huh.
ultimately completely opposite. And I said, yeah, I know. That's why I felt like I needed to say it. And he said, okay, so here's the thing. He said, you will never run a successful training and coaching business. And he said, no,
Huh?
stop. He said, that's not because you're not good enough at it. He said, you're very good at it. He said, you'll never run a successful coaching and training business because you don't want to run a successful coaching and training business.
Okay.
That's not what you want to do. Like, you don't have the passion to get up every morning and make that work, even though you're actually really good at it, like really good at it. I'm like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So what I'd read to him was, what I'd love to do is I'd love to speak and create for a living. I'd love to tell stories and help other people tell their stories through the medium of podcasts. I ultimately
Yeah.
would love to make documentaries. That's what I would love to do with my life. Where I'd
Okay.
love to take a deep dive on real stories and discover them and share them. That's what I'd love to do.
Yeah.
And he said, and as you say that, he said to me, I think, please go and do that. Because he said, everything I know about you, you can do that. He said, and
Mm.
it's who you are. He said, that makes total sense to me. He said, I don't hear you say that and go, what? He said,
Are you crazy?
yeah. He said, I don't think that. I think get on with it. Like, please, for all of us, get on with it.
How
And he
long
said,
ago was that?
this was like a month ago.
Okay.
And 3 days after that conversation, I put out my first podcast, and
Great.
I just did it, right? I've just started. And so, and I said, yeah, but, and he said, stop. He said, the next thing you're about to say to me is, but you don't know how to monetize that. And I said, yeah. He goes, here's a hard truth for you. You weren't monetizing your coaching and training business either. He said, so why don't you stop trying to do that, which won't work because it's not what you want to do, and do the thing you do want to do and work those details out as you go along. I'm like, damn it. I hate truth when it comes like that. And so this is so when I say I'm genuinely mean it when I say like I'm on a quest to kind of work it out, because I am. I'm trying to work it out, and I'm genuinely fascinated by other people's stories because I want to learn. So the point is, what I'm not hosting is a podcast about giving people advice. That's not what this is. This is not I'm an expert in a field. Listen to this and this will improve your life. That is not
Yeah.
what this podcast is about. This podcast is me saying, I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. I'm trying to work it out. I'm trying to do something I love, and I want to talk to a bunch of other people who are doing similar things in their own way, and
Mhm.
I want to learn. And I think as a byproduct, maybe someone will be challenged or encouraged, but it's genuinely as a byproduct. It's not. I'm not setting out to change people's lives. Do
Mm.
you know what I'm saying? I'm not setting. I'm setting out because I want to do this. I'm something of it like your street photography. It's something you want to go and do. And if people view it as a byproduct and go, that's really powerful,
Mm.
amazing. That's amazing. That's a great outcome. But ultimately, it's not the kind of that's not the driver, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, I'm trying to work it out. But yeah, literally, it's a month old that conversation.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and so I'm on the ragged edge of just doing it. Right? I'm
Hey,
just
look,
I don't know. Let's find out.
that's the way to change if you wanna change, just
Yeah,
by
that's right.
picking something that you want to do and start taking one
That's
step
right.
at a time.
Yeah,
As
that's right.
cliche as it sounds,
Yeah.
like I
Well,
was
yeah.
it's
And I
I don't
guess
yeah.
no, go.
Uh, I I I I really think that people nowadays need to create more, um,
Yeah.
it whatever it is. It could be a popsicle structure that they want to build at home. It could be anything.
Yeah.
Just do it. Just change. If you want to make a change, stop talking about it. Just do it.
Yeah.
That's I
And is
think
that switch from consumer to producer, or I don't just want to consume, I want to actually
yeah.
create
Yeah,
something.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I think people need to spend more time with themselves at the same
Mm.
time. Like, it's the constant need of people letting people know where you are and who's around you. It's tiring.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not
it is.
positive. It's not productive. It's not productive in the sense that you're not doing something. It's just not productive as in the personal growth of someone dependent on
Mm.
something else.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I say that a lot, but people don't listen.
Well, we're probably trying to convince ourselves as much as anything else, let's be honest. But
Yeah, that's true.
yeah. Yeah. So I get so my last so the last thing I thought we might cover, and I know you've kind of mentioned a couple of things in the survey you sent back to me, but I guess the last thing this is the last puzzle piece for me. It's kind of trying to how people put together their work, their life, their passions, but also their responsibilities. That's kind of that fourth kicker, right?
Mm,
And you
mm,
touched on it just a little bit a moment ago when you said, there's just harsh realities of we've got to make rent, we've got to pay staff, we've got to, we've got to, we've got to. It's we don't live in this utopian idea where everyone just gets to do what they love, and it doesn't matter if you don't earn any money. Like there's
mm.
responsible. I got 5 kids. Like there's
Yeah.
this right. There's stuff that whether you like it or not, this idea that you can just do whatever, like it's not that easy. And so I guess my question is how has some of those responsibilities shaped or maybe at times curbed your desire to go after something different? Has there been times where you've just said, yeah, now's not the moment, or and I need to wait, it's not the right time, or have you pushed through that and said, yeah, no, I have to anyway? Or I don't know, does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
how has that responsibility kind of been the fourth element, I guess, to this journey?
One of the reason why we also decided to go to Shanghai was because at that time everything was cheap, everything was
Right.
affordable, so that helped a lot for us, for me and my wife.
Yeah.
But the first first real reason, it's because I do have a very supportive wife who believes in
Yeah.
what I do.
We
Um,
can't underestimate that.
she has been amazing throughout the whole journey. She just kept pushing and pushing and pushing to the point where I started to believe in my own work more because I didn't start doing street photography in the belief to be famous in street photography. And in fact, it's very difficult. If you want to choose to become a street photographer and be famous, don't. There's so many people doing
Yeah,
it.
that's right.
And it's become a
Yeah,
commercial thing. And it's hard to stay
that's
true
right.
to yourself. And it's hard to stay
Yeah.
true to the image as well.
The soul kind of gets ripped out of that as well.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
and she has been the backbone that like, hey, that one is a good photo. That one
Mm,
is powerful. That one is great. This one's rubbish. That one's rubbish too.
yeah.
And throw them out.
Honesty's
And
powerful though, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it 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 it, it I think everyone needs to learn how to intake
Yeah.
honesty,
Yeah.
whether it's positive or negative, and don't be so quick to react.
Yeah.
Um, but going back, yeah, my wife, I think she was the biggest backbone. Secondly, was our overheads were
Yeah.
relatively low,
Yes.
and and we, I had a partner who also worked as hard as I did.
Right.
We don't have kids, luckily, so that makes a large chunk of responsibility bearable. Um, and we were also happy with what we got handed. We
Right.
don't we
Yeah.
don't we don't we don't we don't get jealous of other people. We don't
Yeah.
want to have other people. We were happy with what we got. We were happy with the lives that we were living.
Yeah.
Um, and most importantly, we were living in the moment.
Yeah.
And that might be a
Yeah.
bad thing because it also meant that we didn't plan as far ahead as we should.
Sure. Sure.
Um, but living in the moment, I think that was
Mm,
what made our wedding, our marriage, and to this day, we're still doing that.
yeah. I don't think we can underestimate the choices we make to enable us to live the life we want. So
Yeah.
our story is, again, it's very similar. We moved to South Australia because we can afford to live here. Like
Mm,
I can't afford to live in Sydney, straight up. Like I can tell you right now, for me to live back in Sydney, I would need to continually do jobs that hurt me. Like, because the
mm,
jobs would need to be so big for me to
mm,
earn enough to stay there that there is and this is just my story. I'm not talking about other people. This that I can't maintain the kind of job that I would need to be in that space. Now, don't get me
mm,
wrong. I love Sydney. I love it. Like it's still home, right? It's there's still that's part of who I am. But we made the decision to be where we are because we can live here. We our overheads are lower. We can make choices for our family and for our life
mm,
that I know if I lived in Melbourne or Sydney or wherever, New
mm,
York, whatever, my choices are limited purely by purely by the environment in which I'm living.
mhm.
And I don't think but let me say once again, there's real courage and bravery and it's hard, it's not easy to make that decision as well. That's a big decision to
Yeah,
up and move
especially with 5
yourself.
kids, man.
Well, yeah. Well, we had 4 kids when we moved in the state and we moved away from family and I'm not saying that's fun or easy. It's not. It hurts.
Mm,
But ultimately making those decisions enable you to get on with pursuing a life and for me to be able to be in my kids' lives rather than never be home.
yeah, I was just
That's a
about to say
decision I have to make.
it probably end up to be a better decision than you thought, huh?
Yeah. But
I
again,
guess.
that's only in hindsight do you go, right.
Yeah.
There's the benefit, you know.
Uh,
And
yeah.
so I again, I'm not saying it like it's easy. Everyone should just get on with it and do it. No, that's tough, and there are many reasons why people can or can't make those decisions. But I do have friends who are stuck,
Mhm,
and they're stuck because there are certain things they won't change
right.
that they can change, and there are certain things they can't change. That's fine. But if there are certain things you can change, but you just won't even consider changing, I believe the world's a world of sort of cause and effect stuff. Like if you do this, this is the consequence of you doing that. That's just there's nothing
Yeah,
you can do to change that, right?
yeah,
So if you live in New York, you need to earn a certain amount of money to survive.
yep.
Full stop. That's just like you can't bend reality.
Mm,
Like it's like I had this conversation with my wife Katrina the other day. She's so idealistic about things. We go to the central markets here in Adelaide to kind of get some fresh fruit and vegetables
Yeah.
and organic stuff every now and again. And we don't go very often, but every time we go, she's angry when we leave. And I said, "Why are you so angry?" She said, "Because I wanted to buy dried apricots for $2 a kilo." And I said, "Yeah, but dried apricots for $2 a kilo doesn't exist. Like that they nowhere in the world do $2 a kilo apricots. Like they don't. They're $20 a kilo. Like that's just reality. Okay."
Yeah.
But every time we go, she gets angry. She's like, "I didn't buy any apricots," and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, but there's no point being angry about that. They don't exist. Like,
Yeah.
so there's no point being angry that you can't get ahead because you live in New York because that's how expensive it is. I can't
Mm.
do anything about that for you. So then
Mm.
the answer has to be, if that's a problem, move. Like that's
Is
like
hey,
I don't.
let me. This is something that I came across that I found interesting. Is it because people don't are not willing to change, or people are not willing to sacrifice in order to change?
I just think I don't. It could be either of those. It could also just be hard. Like it just could just be hard. And I some it just and I think we're back to it's what we know, right? We're back to the and lots of people go, well, this is home, and I get that. And maybe my personality, or maybe I'm wired, or I don't know that I understand that, but
Mm.
maybe it's just hard, and I'm not downplaying that. And I'm not saying we did it, therefore we're better at it than I'm not saying that either. It's just hard,
It's just everyone's has
but
their
it's
own way, right?
also practice, I think, as well. Like, we got married and we moved away immediately. We were, a couple of hours away, and then and you kind of, it's practice. And so things that, big decisions that some people find really difficult, we sometimes don't find as difficult, not because we're better,
Hmm.
but just we practiced it. Like
But
we've
you've done
just,
it before.
right, you've done it before. So you go, oh, well, yeah. Like if all of a
You
sudden,
have
I'm
a
not
certain
saying
type
this
of
is,
expectation.
yeah, like I'm not saying this is on the cards for us, ever. But I'm saying if all of a sudden, for some reason, we needed to move to Italy,
Hmm.
we could probably do it as a family. Like we could get
Hmm.
our heads around that
Hmm.
because we practiced doing those kinds of different versions of that before. And
Mm.
you've done that. You've moved
Yeah,
internationally multiple times, and that meant
yeah,
you've
too many
practiced
times.
it. But you've practiced it. So actually, if all of a sudden you decided to move somewhere else, you could probably pull that off.
Yeah, and
But it's
coming back to Hong Kong was a great example because, to be honest, we one of the reason why we moved back was because my wife's father passed away last year,
right.
and we just wanted to come back and be
Yep.
with the mother-in-law or her mum.
Yeah.
So from the day that we realized that we should go back to the actual day that we leave and pack up the house and shipped our dog, it was literally 2 months, and
Wow.
we were packed up and we landed. We literally landed in Hong Kong with a new apartment on the 9th or 10th week. Everything
Wow.
just happened, and I
Yeah.
think, like you said, I didn't realize until you mentioned it that we did have practiced it before.
Yeah.
Um, it's
Yeah.
it's we knew what to expect. We knew how to plan things. We knew, what challenges we had ahead, and
Yep.
yeah, yeah, it's
And you
true. It's
also knew
true.
you'd land in a new environment and you would meet new people, and it would be okay, that it would take time, but things would, all those kind of things you go, yeah, I don't know, but somehow in me, I've experienced it before. And I
Mm,
think,
mm, 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 mm.
so I don't know. I think, I also think some people are just wired for risk. I think potentially you and I are maybe wired for a bit more risk than other people. I don't know. That's what I'm fascinated to find out, because I want to talk to more and more and more people, and I want to find out if they just go,
That would
I
be
can't
interesting
do
to
I
start
can't do
seeing.
that. Yeah, and maybe, I know there are people I'm going to interview going to say, look, I've had the same job for 20 years. It's what I do. I just work hard. I'm happy with it. I don't want to move. I don't need to move.
Yeah.
Like, that's okay as well. but I'm fascinated by that because that's not how I'm wired. And so
Uh,
one of the things I'm wanting to do, I guess we haven't done it today as we're talking about. I'm fascinated by. I do a lot of work with personality indicators as well,
okay.
with staffing groups and others, and so that I use the Enneagram process for personality
Okay.
indicators, and as
No
I
idea
move
what.
forward, I'm fascinated to kind of talk with people I interview about what their personality profiling is as well, and how much does their personality affect the way that they put their life together and the decisions they make,
Huh.
and
Okay.
their
Interesting.
the risk they're willing to take and their courage. How does that make sense? And so
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
to at some point. Maybe I send you some details. Maybe we have another follow up chat and we can talk about personality profiling
Oh
around
hell yeah.
how that'd be fascinating. But I think
I also like to find that out for myself too.
yeah, because I think what's also hard is that sometimes you listen to a podcast, something you go, oh, I don't do what they do, and maybe I'm doing it wrong. Well, no, maybe they're just wired for that. Like
Huh.
maybe they're just maybe you're just wired, you're hardwired in your personality to try things and not be risk averse. And I said to one
Well, that
client I
would
had
make
once, sorry, what was that?
I said that would make sense.
Yeah, yeah. And I said to a client of mine once, we were working on some coaching, and we talked about some value propositions of what he valued in his life, and it all kind of came out. And basically, he valued freedom, creativity. Yeah, like they're the things that he kind of valued, that kind of spontaneity, that kind of stuff. And I said to him, "Do you know that the vast majority of people, that is not what they value. What they value is stability,
Yeah.
consistency, and
Yeah.
dependability. That's actually what
Yeah.
a vast majority of people. And so when you talk about you value creativity and spontaneity, there are millions of people who just go, "Oh gosh, no, please no." Like I couldn't bear
I,
to live like that, you know?
I mean, I mean, it's not just that. It's. I mean, I do value those things too. It's just whether sometimes my job is not in. It's not that stable. You
Got
know,
it.
it's not like a
Yeah,
9 to 5 job.
that's right.
And maybe I've been. I got also trapped into a loophole, a loop.
Yeah,
Maybe I don't know.
maybe. I don't know either. So this is what I'm fascinated by, right? Because I don't know the answers to this. So what I don't like though is when uh, we so here's the other thing. We cannot compare our stories to each other. That's the thing. I'm like, we got to stop doing that, right? I'm passionate. We got to stop comparing apples with oranges. So
Huh?
your experience and my experience, although they may have some similarities, I can't compare them. It's impossible to compare. There's too many variables, right? For me
Yeah,
to say,
I agree.
oh, Zach's just better at that than me. Well, that's rubbish. Like I don't understand that. It's way too complicated for you to compare those things. And there's a comedian that I know who, Tim Hawkins. He talks
Okay.
about when people tell their stories and they tell these
Yeah.
kind of stories of transformation, and you hear
Yeah.
them tell the stories, and they tell they've got these really horrible, powerful backgrounds that they've overcome, and they're supposed to be encouraging. They're supposed to make you go, wow. But actually, what you end up saying is, I wish I was addicted to crack. Like, because in comparison, you go, oh, my life's really boring and mundane. But their story is so like they got such a powerful story, and here just little old me is just this boring. And that's what's fascinating because as I talk to people, I say, "Would you come and talk to me on the podcast?" I've had a bunch of people say, "Why would you want to talk to me?" Like
Mhm.
there's nothing interesting about my life. There's nothing interesting
Mhm.
about how I've got no stories to tell. And
Mhm.
then I ask them a couple of questions, and all of a sudden they start telling me stories. I go, we've all got a story, right?
Have
But
stories.
people have decided that it's not an important one. It's not. And so, yeah, I'm doing this because I'm fascinated and I want to hear from different people and how they kind of make it all work. That's the
It's you know, my wife used to complain that about me. I don't think highly enough of myself.
yeah,
With my work, with my, I used to think that my photos, all my friends around me likes it because they're my friends, and it's not because they
right,
like my photos.
right.
I mean, some of them did, and I'm sure some
Sure,
of them also liked it because they're just a friend. Um,
sure.
but yeah, I that like before Instagram, I was so afraid of sharing things. I was so afraid of telling people my point of view. I was so afraid of
Yeah.
showing people who I am
Yeah.
in some sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it.
And the advice is just to do it, right? It's not, I mean, not even advice. It's just everyone should just do it, and
Sure.
it brings in new things. It brings in new experiences, and it also brings in new challenges that you have to face to yourself. If that
Absolutely.
makes sense.
And again, the more you do it, the more you practice it,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
the easier it becomes.
Exactly.
And yeah, so I think comparison's a killer. Comparison is a killer. Um, and
But
our
also
stories have
with
value
our
in them.
comparisons, also, okay, like Instagram right now, I think it's a very unhealthy place.
Yeah,
And I try to do my best to keep it as genuine as I can
yeah,
for myself.
yeah.
Like you said, like comparison, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. It also depends on how you take it. Like we
Right,
were saying before, like with criticism, some people take it and some people can't.
sure. But you
And
see,
it's
the
learning how
reality.
to
So I
take
don't
it.
know how much of them. I don't know if you've ever read any Brené Brown
No.
stuff. So she, well, that's a whole nother podcast. But anyway, Brené Brown she's a what she would
Brendan,
call
I'm
a
gonna
shame.
write it
She's a
down.
shame researcher.
Oh,
So she,
really?
yeah, so she says if you ever want to stop a conversation at a party, tell someone you're a shame researcher. They immediately walk away. And
Huh.
so she's
Uh,
fascinating, but she would say two things. She would say there is no creativity without vulnerability.
yeah.
Because she says the very nature of creativity is that it's you, right? So it's
Yeah.
authentic kind of stuff. But she also says that she does not listen to the opinions of anybody who's not in the ring. So she says what actually trying and being involved and creating and doing something. She doesn't listen to the voices of people who are watching, if that makes sense. So um, yes, you want to take feedback, but she will only accept feedback from people who are actually in the middle of the wrestle at the same time. So
Huh.
the problem with things like Instagram is, and social media in particular, is we have, for the first time in history, we have the ability to comment on people we've never met from a distance and be super critical of their output,
Yep. But
but
have
we're
to
not in
take
the
some
ring. We're complete.
stuff.
It's literally the definition of throwing rocks from a distance.
Yeah.
Like, and so it's the ability to kind of filter out that and listen to the people who are in the ring with you, trying to
Mm.
work it out.
Mm,
Um,
mm, 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 mm.
so the answer is not to take on criticism or input, but it's who do you take it from? Yeah.
Okay.
So Brené
Interesting
Brown's
thought.
fascinating. That'll one of her books, Gifts of Imperfection, was the first one I read, and there's a new one
Okay.
which I've just been doing some work with some people called Dare to Lead, and it talks
Okay.
about authenticity and vulnerability and leadership in organizations. Fascinating stuff. But um, yeah, she's got a Netflix special, a new one that's come out. She's very funny. She's from Texas. She's very funny. But
Okay.
that is a whole nother podcast.
I just jotted it down,
Yeah, good.
so I'll go research and take a look.
Yeah.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah, interesting. So look, I
Uh,
know we're all different and we've all got a story. And I guess that's the sum up of the Flea Factory podcast for me is that I want to chat. And I think, as I mentioned in another episode, I have like 55 people on a list that I want to talk to
yeah,
already. And I'm like,
that's
I'm
a
ready. Let's go.
that's a
And so I've got,
huge challenge, man.
yeah. So I've got like 3 people this week already. So you're my first this week, but I've got someone on Thursday I'm meeting with, and then on Friday I've got another good friend of mine who he said to me, I want to come and spend a whole day with you. I'm like, okay, this could be interesting. So we're gonna spend a day and chat, and at some point we'll turn the microphones on and we'll see what happens. But um
Well, that's a great thing
yeah,
with the acceptance of long format
that's
podcasts
right.
these days. Yeah, you
Yeah,
can really dig
absolutely.
into something.
What I think the reality for people is the thing about podcasts is that it's kind of given people time back in their lives. Like you can't read a book and cook at the same time, and you can't read a book and drive, but you can listen and do all
Yeah,
of those activities, right? Um,
yeah, yeah,
and um, and I think we're getting sick of 3 minute manicured, controlled pieces of information. We know that life is more complicated than a 3 minute conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Like we know that instinctively. And
Mm-hmm.
therefore, if you're going to explore meaningful issues, you need to take the time to talk them through. And especially when
Yeah.
it's not me sitting here for an hour and a half lecturing somebody on how they should do things better, but it's
Mm,
actually an hour and a half of let's ask some questions, let's learn from each other, let's
yeah.
share each other's stories and
Share.
go,
Yeah.
yeah, is there something we can both learn here? That I think is what people are kind of craving. They want more of that stuff. So look, flipping Joe Rogan does 4 hour podcasts. Like seriously, that's
Uh, you know,
crazy stuff.
you
Like
know, it's perfect because I often spent 4 to 5 hours editing on photos,
there you
and
go.
he's always in the background. It's awesome.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it's a
Yeah.
great intro.
And look, he has his own set of fascinating guests on as well. And he's a very
Yes.
interesting character himself. But
Yes.
I think this sort of more long form where we get into real discussion it is important. That's what people want. So we'll
But
see. This is the plan.
it's as much as a self-discovery, yeah, right now for
Yeah,
you.
for me, it's absolutely. And if people want to listen while I'm discovering something, all power to them. But I'm doing it because I genuinely want to learn and I want to hear other people's stories. And yeah, I
Hey,
think
I learned
there's
something.
value in them.
I learned quite a few
Good.
things today, which I'll look into.
Well, there you go. And I've learned a heap, and I'm super glad that you had the time to come and chat with me. I hope
Looking
you've
forward to share more.
yeah, good. Well, you'll be a regular. Let's see how we go. Yeah, cool. Well, hey, I'm super thankful for your time, and for your
Don't be,
story. And
honestly.
I am now. I'm really bummed that when I was in Hong Kong just recently, I wasn't able to see you. I was only in the airport, which
Eh,
you know, but
it's all right.
I'll
Time sometimes work, time sometimes doesn't.
yeah, yeah. I'll
Maybe I get to come down to Adelaide to visit you and your family.
Perfect. All sounds good. Awesome. Well, thanks,
Yeah.
Zach. I super appreciate it. And until next time, I'll talk to you soon.
Looking forward to hear more.
Yeah. Thanks, mate. Well, thanks for listening today. I hope you've super enjoyed hearing from my friend Zach. As I said, we've got a few more podcasts coming this week, some interviews with some other friends of mine. I hope you've really enjoyed it. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Castbox, or whatever it is. Make sure you hit subscribe and stay with us as we continue this conversation. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon. See ya.